Yay, we're back.
Hello,
Hi,
good to be
Coco.
back.
Nice to have you again. I don't even know if this is like my thing or your thing. It's like it's been our thing for so long. It's like it's never really like a thing.
I mean, yeah, I feel any ownership.
Yeah. It's
It
for the
is
gods.
exactly.
Yeah, hang on. My goodness. Okay, so now that we've talked about spilling the tea,
Let's continue to spill the tea.
let's continue to spill the tea. So we had a little bit of technical difficulties this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Other than that, I just had like a minor shock when I dropped my mic into my cup of tea a second ago, y'all. And everything is fine now. Otherwise, it's been a great morning.
Yeah, well, that's why I switched to water.
Mm, very healthy of you.
I know, right? So, the top of the morning, one of your guests, who shall remain nameless, who's attending your Rainbow, in the Bay Area, reached out to me and said, "I'm going to be coming to town because we know him. We're mutual friends, and he's going to be hanging out with me the day before your retreat starts."
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I can say shout out, hi Brian.
Oh, Brian's coming to see you. Cool.
Yeah, so we're gonna be doing that. So that's awesome, man. And I also, it's funny. Yesterday I posted on our Men of Yoga Instagram a snapshot of the retreats available on the website, which is menofyoga.men. And on your particular ad, I put sold out. Like
Well, it's true.
well, it's true. And I want to like leave it on there. And it's like, just so you know, like these retreats are selling out. And so go check them out when you can.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And the next time it happens, just go for it. Don't question it. Just go.
Yeah. Just go. Just go. Just trust.
Sign it
Rainbow.
up, figure
Yeah.
it out.
Oh, absolutely. So I don't really have much of an agenda like we did the last time. It was so weird because like now that we said like let's do it again, then I felt like there's a little amount of like not pressure but like, oh, I got to make sure that my hair's done and I'm wearing the right shirt, like, you know what I mean, like I like prepped and I'm like, no, you're gonna go walk your dog, you're gonna do your thing, and you're gonna hit record as soon as Coco gets on the screen and it'll be what it is.
Yeah, and we're just gonna flow.
We're gonna flow. There is one thing I wanted to chat with you about is about like going back to teaching yoga. um I just want to find out from you, like, how much do you think of your past and your inspirations growing up, your upbringing, and the environment that you grew up in, and all the hobbies and all the things that you've tried out as an adolescent, as you became an adult? How much of that has shown up you becoming a teacher?
Like, how much did my previous experiences like encourage me to want to be a teacher?
Yeah, or how much of it does it show up as a teacher? Like I'll give you an example because for me, I'd realize like I was never going to be a yoga teacher in my vernacular. I was just not, on my vision board at all. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But when I discovered power yoga, like the whole sweaty 100-degree heat and the flows and the movement and the choreography, it called to me. And when I became a yoga teacher, like one thing I noticed, like even though I wasn't really like a legit yogi, I've only been practicing for less than a year,
Hmm.
when I joined teacher training. But I'd realized that once I got comfortable in my own skin, I was a DJ before, and so I have musicality. I love dancing, so there's choreography. I grew up in a religious background, and so I do understand what it's like to put a message out there that uplifts people's spirits. Even though like I wasn't a big fan of my particular religious upbringing, like it still served me at some way, shape, or form, and it's like a natural thing that shows up.
Hmm.
So I'm just wondering, as far as your background, like, did you find that you're able to pull from certain experiences that makes your teaching fuller and more authentically you?
You know, I actually, first of all, I didn't know that you were a DJ, but that's a fun fact about Gabriel that I just learned.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Hey, Madonna's in the back, so
yeah, of course.
along with Darth Vader.
Yeah, is that your light and your dark
Well,
symbolized?
we can say that. So that's Aaron, and then
Uh-huh.
that's
Well, they're
Mike.
both kind of dark archetypes, really, but
Yeah,
it,
absolutely. Yeah, that's the yin and your yang, right?
right.
Yeah. So DJ, I think like, but we'll go into that a little bit more because I want to talk about like what it's like discovering your queerness.
Hmm.
But I thought I'd like let's spread it on thinly and talk about yoga first because I feel like when we start talking about like coming out and discovering your queerness, it's like that's a whole layer of like ahas.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Well, you have a huge, perfect agenda for today's call. What are you talking about? This is all like, these are big topics, and for me, they all flow together so perfectly because they're all very interrelated. But
Yeah.
I really, honestly, my answer today is like, I don't really think that my upbringing or like other activities I was involved in as a kid really were directly like, made me want to be a teacher or made me equipped to be a teacher. I'm also a practitioner and just big nerd of human design, which is it's a system, it's a relatively new system that helps you to really understand your strengths and your design as a human through like how astrology is imprinted into your chakras.
Mhm.
So this is something I talk to people about a lot, and I analyze myself through this. And my energy type is a projector. Projectors naturally want to be, well, we're designed to be guides. It's not
Mhm.
just like something that's conditioned in, like you should be a teacher. It's just like so many yoga teachers are projectors because they just naturally go get into those positions. And then beyond that, my wiring is for leadership. And
Mhm.
so I always did want to be a leader. And when I discovered yoga, people just started to recognize me as like, you seem like you would be a good leader of this because I was already a personal trainer. And at that point in my life, that was the thing because I was always very athletic and
Mhm.
my physicality, like physicality is a big part of who I am too. But being queer and an artist and not necessarily a competitive like team player, I didn't really like fit into sports. That's not where people were recognizing me as like I wasn't excelling there, but like people would see me so anyway, like that's why I got into weightlifting, which
Mhm.
was also like, somewhat part of me trying to make myself more masculine and train myself in that way. But also it was a great outlet for anxiety and stress, and I did really enjoy it because it's individual, like lifting weights and just pushing myself.
Yeah.
So I became a personal trainer, and then the yoga teachers in the gym were like, "Wow, you're very outgoing and very flexible, and we'd like some more male yoga teachers. You should get into yoga." And so, sort of like you, it was like projected onto me that I should get into yoga.
Yeah.
But then it turned out to actually be like really correct for me. I was in the room like just really loving it and like getting messages about self-acceptance and peace and self-care, which I was not getting that in the gym, and I definitely wasn't getting that from my religious upbringing either. That was all about hating yourself and sin.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at that point in my life, I felt pretty terrible about myself in general, and I was like fluffing myself up and fluffing my ego with, having a leadership position as a personal trainer and being super, super fit. And then I started getting recognized in yoga class, and they were like, you should be a yoga teacher. So that was kind of my gateway towards that becoming a real thing for me.
Mhm.
I started being impacted by the messaging and the mindfulness aspects, and people were recognizing me as a leader. So it was a natural progression. I just stepped into teaching.
Fantastic. You said last week that Ashtanga was your base. So what
Hmm.
was about that? Was it Ashtanga that you were drawn to, like when you started practicing, and like what is it about Ashtanga that like became your thing? Because to me, Ashtanga was awesome until I realized like we're doing the same thing every week. I used to be religious and going Monday nights with Aaron, and
Hmm.
I love the discipline, but I'm not a disciplined person. Like I've always been like rebel at heart. Shout out
Hmm.
Madonna, rebel heart. But like I've been like this person that's like I don't want to be told what to do constantly. So be told
Hmm.
to do constantly the same thing over and over. It was
Hmm.
much more of a challenge for me because I didn't feel dynamic in that particular class. But I do love Ashtanga because it helped me develop like really solid sequencing because you have this
hmm
base and all you could do is like kind of show different variations of it and you'd have a nice flow,
hmm
you know. So what was it about Ashtanga that drew you in?
Well, I have a peaceful, like, neutral relationship and healthy respect for Ashtanga now, but I went through kind of like a positive and a negative phase with it first, because
Yeah,
at first, my conditioning and my ego is what chose Ashtanga. It was like I have a lot of conditioning to be really, really harshly self-disciplined and to push myself constantly. That's
yeah.
how I was raised. And so, that, and then the part of me that likes to show off was like Ashtanga.
Ah,
Because I want to learn to do all these impressive tricks. I want to have a really impressive, awesome practice. And so, straight out of that was my step into yoga, out of just like the straight up gym world and like triathlons and being in a very ego um, driven place. And then I realized that the artist in me and the creative in me was not being nourished by that.
mhm.
And it was actually just kind of like feeding the inner critic and the part of me that is so harshly disciplined that the creative part of me doesn't really get to do anything.
Yeah.
And I realized that I needed more of a softer practice.
Okay.
Um, so I did Ashtanga for like 2 years. And then once I realized that I don't have to do that anymore, I came to a more peaceful place with it where, like you, if I show up to at least, I mean, there's great things about Ashtanga. It's like, at least it makes sense. Like it's a like biomechanically awesome practice. And if you as a teacher like forget or just don't know or don't feel inspired, you don't know what you're going to teach, or like you have a moment where you like freeze like a deer in the headlights in class, you can just fall back on this pattern of Ashtanga, like, because it is good and it makes sense. So if you
Right.
don't have anything to share, like I can always like revert back, not revert, I can always just like defer back to the Ashtanga sequence and maybe make it a little bit more creative here and there and like throw some things into it, but it's always there for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd like to think like because I was raised in the power yoga space. I always have a base, like a 20-minute base of like what the class, and then I add either in the beginning or towards the end, but there's always that base. You know what I mean? And the power is based on Ashtanga. So I think that that's why I was kind of drawn to it and why I practiced it religiously for a while because it was
hmm
very power-esque, you know.
hmm
And I think when I started getting exposed to like more vinyasa and more flow, that's when I start to like marry the two because I do love the movement, you know,
hmm
and I like to incorporate stillness and movement all in the same space. I want to talk about what you said earlier about like, you know, going to the gym and you know, at least like getting workouts and trying to be Mr. Beefcake. I too had my run in because of circuit parties, and I don't know if I told you about this, but like, so yeah, I was a DJ in my teens all the way to my 20s. I became a club DJ. And so it was natural for me, like progression was to find I quit DJing because I got so jealous of watching people down in front of me having a good time, and I'm like working.
Like sweating up there and like
Yeah, they're all having a good time, like, and I'm sitting there going, ah, fuck, okay, what's the next song? And you have to keep that energy going and going and going for like 3 to 4 hours. You know what I mean? And
hmm
you know, and so finally I'm like, dude, I'm giving up my Saturday nights and I'm not partying with the folks. Now let's put a pin on this. I was a nervous wreck every time I showed up. Like my hands would shake. Like back in the day, we would have turntables and vinyl. So
uh-huh.
my I would shake. I'd be so nervous right before I'd come on. And the thing for me is like I'd have to have at least a shot or two, or at least minimum 3 beers. So I would show up to work early just so I can get the buzz. But it worked. I'm like, okay, now I'm in a party mode, no more shaky, whatever. Um, but then I realized like I can't do this every night, so I quit. And so when I stopped DJing, I now became part of the party side of things where I would take it a little bit too far and I would party from like Thursday to Sunday and I would just like rage on. And the funny part is like back in the day in the 90s, there was a thing called the circuit parties, right? And you and I talked about the circuit parties. Like The ones I went to was the White Party in Palm Springs, and I went for like every year I was there. And I realized that there's a culture there and muscle boys and all that stuff. And so I too fell into that trap of like, well, I need to like look like the other guys. I want to feel like I belong. So I joined a gym. And when I joined the gym, funny thing is the trainer had asked, is like, okay, so talk to the trainer. Trainer says, like, what are your goals? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, do you want to help lift the fridge or do you want to help your friends lift the couch? Like if they were to move. And I'm like, oh, sweetie, I'm not trying to lift anything. I just want a little bit of muscle so I can take my shirt off at a club. But that was like my thing. It's like it's so funny how we all kind of fall into some kind of subcategory because we want to fit in, or at some point we're not satisfied with the way that we present ourselves, and so therefore we want to look like everybody else, you know. And I think that happens for a lot of us when we're younger, you
Hmm.
know. And you know, thank God for yoga because you know, as we go down that yoga lane, you start to like unfold and start to peel off the layers a little bit. Because
Hmm.
I joined yoga because I love the physicality and all that stuff. But when it took me a good 6 months to finally, you know, pull it all in. Like I was insecure about the music because I wasn't playing my music. I was doing someone else's sequencing, but it took me a good 6 months to figure out like, bro, if you're encouraging people to find their inner truth or find their own, to go in and discover their self, you need to put yourself out there first. Like, don't try to be pretending to be a yoga teacher that you're not. Don't try to be like into, you know, all of these other elements of what yoga teacher looks like, that be quintessentially you. So I ramped up my music. I played house. You know what I mean? Like I just went there and I pretended I was a DJ while I was teaching, and it you know, it was a fuller experience for me, you know. And so here we are, you know, 18 years later, and still inspired and still moving around, you know.
Hmm.
But I honestly think that that's a lot of it has to do with, you know, based on where we were at, and then who and what we chosen to take with us as we go down this path, and then some things that we leave behind, you know. I have a
Hmm.
question too, and I think one of the reasons why I'm asking this is because we grew up in like a religious background. Like, did you ever feel when you became a teacher, like, oh my God, I'm turning into a preacher, but I'm now preaching yoga?
Absolutely, yes. I came from an evangelical background, and like my natural guiding and leadership qualities were still working, but the conditioning I was getting and like what I was sharing was religious. So I was, like, the kind of person who was like leading Bible studies and like witnessing to people. That's a that's a whole other
Yeah,
past self.
yeah,
But yeah, I just, once for me, it was very like, okay, like when I got into yoga and my mind, I had like this very dramatic awakening experience. Um, for a long time, I was kind of in the gray area of like still religious and still Christian and starting to learn about Eastern spirituality and mysticism at the same time. And then all of a sudden, I had this huge awakening where it just changed, and suddenly the script changed, and what I was sharing and would changed. And I still had a lot of that like evangelical conditioning that made me want to share everything with everyone, even if they didn't want it.
yeah,
Which that is what when I call it preaching. You're just like preaching stuff. So it took
yeah,
me a while to kind of like come down from there and be able to discern like, is this person recognizing me and asking me for guidance? Like, does this person want me to be their yoga teacher, or is this just like a friend or
yeah.
some other kind of connection? So I don't feel like I'm preaching anymore most of the time, but I went through a stage of where I was definitely preaching the gospel of yoga.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You know, because we do teacher training, we just had a graduation a couple of weeks ago, and I had the one of the last TED Talks, the last spiritual guru talks that I offered was using social media to put the word out there, how yoga has helped you, and the benefits of yoga, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
And we spent a good 15, 20 minutes just giving them examples of how to put it out there. And when I came home, I spoke with Aaron, like, oh my God, I'm turning into like one of those people Jesus saves kind of, like yoga saves, and I just had to do like a quick double take, like, like I finally get why and how people lean in because it's helped them in a certain way and they feel like this is powerful, you know.
Hmm.
And so when I had that experience, I'm like, wow, I fell back into that lane, but from a different set of eyes, with a different set of eyes, with a fresh perspective, you know. And I do lean and believe in the yoga concept and the teachings, only because it gives you space to like make it your own, and you can interpret it however you see and how you deem and how you see it fit for yourself. Like, we don't label anything, we don't call it God, we call it Jesus, you call it whatever you want. And at the end of the day, you're trying to go in and trying to figure out your stuff so that you can be a better version of yourself tomorrow, you know. So in that regard, like I am a big marketeer of yoga in that regard. And yeah, and yes, yoga does save. Now
In many ways.
it doesn't save you money.
Well,
That's
until you get to that letting go of attachment stage of development where it's like, oh my God, I don't need anything anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So
So maybe eventually,
yeah, eventually, it pays different ways,
for
I'd say.
sure.
Yeah. And it has its ebbs and flows. Like, you're going to be like trending, and then before you know it, you have a lull, and it has its peaks and valleys, and at least we do get to look at this in the totality space. It's not just this day, it's not this, it's all of it, you know.
Yeah, it's an organic process.
Yes, organic process. And so let's let's go back in time. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is like, I don't know, discovering queerness for yourself. Like, what is it that you had realized about yourself? Like, oh, I'm not like the rest, like the others. One of these things is not like the others.
Well, I was always just not right. Uh, I was born into a very, very conservative, straight-laced family and community in rural Alabama. So, like it was extreme. And so my weirdness was always showing through. I was like, um, from a very early age, just never really like receiving or seeing things in the right way, like, and just saying really off the wall stuff. Definitely always like attracted to like the GI Joe characters that I was supposed to be playing with, like, just like not playing with it in the right way. And also like playing with Barbies and like wanting to like dress up and just do super weird stuff, but also like really confusing stuff because I would play with Barbies, also like not in the right way. As in like strapping them onto my remote control cars and stuff that I was given, just like always doing unexpected stuff. And I was always attracted to men from like sexually attracted to men from like an extremely young age. And so my parents did everything they could to curb all that behavior and make sure that I knew that it all needed to be hidden. And so I was always that way. And then I started to know that that was really not okay and believe that by the time I was maybe like 10 or 11. I think that's kind of when everything started to get real messy and unhappy for me.
Mm,
And then by the time I was a teenager, the inner critic and that extremely disciplined voice totally took over my life. And that's when I started really beating myself up and trying to train myself to be really masculine, and just started completely disregarding or devaluing all of my queerness and uh, more feminine qualities. And that's when the inner artist and creative queer part of me started to really suffer.
yeah.
And so that's when I got into weightlifting, which spiraled into like out of control fitness obsession and eating disorder. And so then when I started to become a yoga teacher, that's why, like I was taking a step in the right direction by getting into Ashtanga yoga and stuff like that, but it was still like very militant, like kind of obsessive behavior.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I got lost in that question, but yeah, I was always super queer from an early age and then started like,
Yeah. So if you're open to going a little bit deeper in this chat, I'm curious to see like what confirmed your homosexuality. Like, was there an event? Was there like, because you said I was always like attracted to men. Like, are we talking like TV? Was there a specific actor? Were you into what is his name? Tom. What is Mission Impossible? Oh my God.
Tom, I don't
Tom
know,
Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Was there a Tom Cruise ever in your life?
For sure. Like specifically Tom Cruise was like a thing for me, but
Wait, I
like
can't hear you again. So you're right there.
but
The,
specifically Tom Cruise was definitely like a thing. But I crushed on all kinds of men, cartoons and real men.
yeah.
And I started to, and just like regular men on the street too, like we didn't have porn and stuff, and phones. And so, yeah, men in magazines, the underwear aisle at the mall and department stores, like, whew,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I would
Calvin
always,
Klein ads.
ooh, yeah, sneak away and get real hot and bothered as a kid about that stuff. Um,
You were a pretty 10-year-old boy.
like rare opportunities to creep in like locker rooms and bathrooms.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I was always very gay. And then I first started to like really explore that stuff on my own on the internet, but I was too afraid to actually look at porn. So I found like this middle road, and I've talked to other guys who have found like even my partner who like innocently used to use like eBay and Amazon and like even shopping to try to see like porn. So I would use eBay and search for like male art. Like those were like my two search terms.
Yeah.
This is when I was like 12, 13 and entered my like extremely fucked up, tormented like um stage of sexual awakening and development and feeling extremely guilty and bad about it and like doing it in secret. So like at night, late at night and stuff like that, I would get on eBay and look at like male erotic art on eBay. You could, like now we see that stuff on Instagram, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was looking at that stuff and it's almost like real porn or like almost like real pornographic images. It's like art that comes from the gay male fantasy. So I would have a lot of fun with that and then also feel horrible about it at the same time.
Yeah. I love hearing your story because I can't even remember back in the day, like we didn't have access to any of that, right? There was no internet, there's no, there's no Pornhub, nothing like that. And like the closest thing to getting, content like that was to go to an adult bookstore. I'm pretty sure they still have it because they sell sex toys still, right? Yeah, they still have those adult bookstores. But
Mhm.
I remember when I was 18 that I was finally legal and I could go to one of those bookstores just to see like, what those all about and to see all the magazines is just in your face, like their sexuality and the rawness of it all and leather and hairy chest. And then they also had like these booths. Have you ever been to an adult bookstore?
I've been into a couple sex shops, but I don't think they were bookstores like that.
Interesting.
I watched a documentary once about the circus of books in LA, and I have a friend who works there, so I know about it from that.
Oh yeah, the documentary about that. Yeah, I think we're talking about the same one. There's a
Yeah, the
documentary about
documentary
going.
was awesome.
Yeah, I love that show. So when I finally went, they had these booths that you can go in and you get quarters or whatever. And so I went with a roommate of mine, and she and I just had moved out together, so we were exploring, and we were close to San Francisco, and so there's access to different adult bookstores. So the one that we went in, and there's a booth, and we're like, fuck it, let's give it a shot. And we threw our quarters in there and we started watching like, oh my God, like porn. And we're like looking at each other. We're like, what the fuck do these guys do here? And then we look down on the floor. I'm like, oh, fuck. They didn't even clean up, man. It was like just, yeah, there was this stuff on the floor and I'm like, oh my fucking Lord. And that was became real for me. Like it just like, it made sense. But then again, I realized like, holy fuck, I didn't know that that's how the other side lived. Like, is this the normal? Is this what people do? Is this what I do as a gay man? It was very confusing, because I lost my manginity, I call it my manginity at a young age. And so, dude, by the time I was 18, I thought threesomes were the normal thing to do when you're a guy. So it wasn't even like I don't know. I one of those things I'm just trying to blend in, and I feel like there's a lot of sexual energy there, and it was fun. But I didn't know what normal gay sex was at that point. All I know is that you did it and you didn't tell anybody about it. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not like my development happened so much slower and so much later because I went through this huge era of my life where I completely successfully, for the most part, shut down my sexuality. So I was paranoid and terrified of sex.
Oh
And I
yeah.
didn't really allow myself to explore on my own in private. So like sacral chakra was frozen.
Yeah.
So I stayed like that, and I partly kept myself in really in that state by kind of living a sort of monk-ish life between like the ages of 18 and 25. I was just extremely dedicated to like nerdy stuff, studying, group activities, fitness, yoga. I just exhausted myself and didn't do anything to like stimulate pleasure or allow emotional flow. So
Mhm.
like that helped me to keep my sexual urges at bay. So I really didn't even watch porn. And so when I finally started having sex, like here's the good thing about that though, like or I feel like it helped me in some ways because once I threw myself into having sex with men, um, I had no conditioning about what that was supposed to be like, or whether I was supposed to be a top or a bottom, or I was supposed to do this or
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so I was just super primal and organic when I first started having sex, of just doing exactly and only what was intuitive for me. Um, and like if somebody asked for something in particular and I wanted to do it, then I would do it. But like I just learned through experience. I had never seen two men having sex before I started having sex. And I was like 25 years old. So, um, yeah.
Wait, let's I want you to say that again, but in slow motion.
I didn't start having sex till I was 25.
Damn, son. Now I feel like a whore. Oh,
Ain't
I
nothing wrong
had
with
no.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a whore now, but
Look at us
lost
now.
time.
See, and this was me, and then this is you now.
Yeah.
But it's funny because like I ever since I've met you or ever since like seen your content and stuff, like I wonder if people understand and realize that there's a difference between what you put out in the universe and who you really are as an individual. Because I know that you very carefree and very open, and some people look at that as like they have access to you. And I know that you and I had this conversation before. It's like, look, bro, there's a difference between what I'm putting out there with your own when you're in charge versus people thinking like just because I put out there doesn't mean you get have access to that whenever you want, you know? Like they think that maybe like you're just this sex creature that's like, nympho, like just doing it all day, all night kind of person. Well, there's actually that it's content. You know what I mean? Yeah, and I think people get confused sometimes because they look at internet and they look at content on there and they automatically think it's real or that's all you have to offer, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. You know, I,
Hard. That's been hard for me. I learned through, bumping up against life and trial and error, and I can be pretty naive. And so I've had people even like come visit the farm and like without really getting real and having the awkward conversation and like checking their motivations. And then they get here and they're like, I thought you were just like naked and having sex all day, and this is not what I thought. Or like they're disappointed that they're not getting what they want from me.
Yeah.
And so exactly literally had to face that and started to get, I just have to ignore people sometimes. And sometimes, like if they're really wanting to connect with me, I have to check and be like, why do you want to be like, why do you want to connect with me, or what do you want?
Yeah. So since 25 of like exploring your sexuality at that point at a physical level, like what point did you feel comfortable in your own skin to be naked and just be free? And I know one doesn't necessarily have to do with the other in terms of like, oh, it's your sexuality, but when did you feel comfortable enough to say that I can shove these clothes? I don't give a fuck.
Well, I had already been practicing nudity um, long before coming out. So
Mhm.
I started like modeling for art classes and stuff because that was a fear that I wanted to overcome. And that is a natural thing in my wiring too. Like when I realize that I'm irrationally afraid of something, I want to overcome it. So I just throw myself into it. Um, I'm a very like, yeah, mutative person. So I have the word embrace discomfort tattooed on my arm. I like to face challenges. I like to so anyway, I noticed I was really afraid of being naked, and I was like, how liberating would it be to get over that? And so I started modeling for art classes. It was terrifying at first, and then I got fine with it. And so the nudity part had already been overcome. And then I'm telling you, I was in yoga teacher training, which this was after my Ashtanga era. I was in therapy. I was like trying to discover and explore and figure out my queer tormentedness and figure that out. So I locked in, or I gravitated. I saw this kooky, crazy witch lady yoga teacher. She was hilarious, and I was like, "Oh my God, you're my teacher. I want to learn from you. Like you're gonna bring out, like you're gonna take care of this part of me that's been neglected and shoved in the closet for years." So she was helping me, and she was teaching a more like a very trauma-based style of yoga based in tantra. So I had no idea what I was getting into. I just saw her and was like, I want to learn from you, and I signed up for her teacher training.
Yeah.
And she recognized the closeted queer, just immediately, because I was very sad and like I was very different at that time, very guarded, very but she recognized it right away. So she had like a mission to help me. And we were in the sacral chakra weekend, and she was doing singing bowls and meditation, and all of a sudden I had like this crazy kundalini awakening,
Mhm.
and the sacral chakra opened up. And the rest of the weekend was a lot of crying and me coming out of the closet just very unexpectedly.
Wow.
And it was very sudden because I was super repressed and very depressed and just very stuck in my life. And so that happened all of a sudden. And then like within the next week, I was like, all right, well, I'm ready to throw this religious shit away and start having sex.
Yeah.
So my first sexual experience with a man, I was still so naive and so innocent, and I didn't use apps or anything. I didn't even know about Grindr. This
Mhm.
was only like 7 or 8 years ago. So this is
Mhm.
2016. So I just went into the queerest bar in town, sat down looking cute and available. And within minutes, a guy showed up and started flirting with me and bought me drinks. And I made him wait like a few days of like texting me and chatting and stuff. Um, but yeah, I just threw myself into sex with him one night. It was super fun. Had no idea what I was doing, but I was ready. So that was my icebreaker. And then that was the confirming moment where I was like, okay, I'm officially gay. I've like been in bed with girls and like tried to make myself do it. I just really didn't want to. But this was completely natural. And he wasn't even like the hottest dude ever or, anything. It was just like really comfortable, really friendly, really cool. I was like, I'm definitely gay. So all of a sudden, just in the way that I do things, I just throw myself in. That was my icebreaker on sex. And it was
Wow. So you came out, you declared your identity at that point, and then you confirmed it after the fact. So
That's
you
how it went for me.
wow. So I mean, 'cause I'm used to hearing stories like I dabbled and then I confirmed, you know, but you actually like came out, declared it, and then you explored it.
Yeah, because I've thought about this a lot too, but for me in my conditioning, like I was really conditioned to be honest with everyone
Mhm.
and share your truth and be who you are. That was like evangelical stuff. Plus, I'm a person that really, in my heart, I want to be seen and known authentically and accurately. So I don't really have secrets. I am very transparent. Sometimes to an extent that isn't good. I'm kind of like learning to keep some things to myself now.
That's what my husband tells me about. He goes, "You and Coco are a perfect match, man, because you don't care about like what you talk about. You put it out there and blah blah blah." I'm like, but there's nothing to
I'm like,
hide.
the
Yeah.
world is burning to the ground, y'all. Why don't we all just come out about everything and just
Yeah, like it all gets to be here, right? Like that's the whole point of yoga is like bringing it all together, like with the discomfort and the stuff that you like it all, you don't get to pick and choose, you get to pick and choose whatever you put out there, or you can frame it however you want out there. It's also accepting of what's in here, hoping people accept you for all the things that come with you, you know,
yeah,
you're all in one package, you know,
yeah.
you
But
know,
I was
did you
like, I know that I'm about to like take a sharp turn. I've been pretending to be straight, and I know that all of a sudden, because I have no intentions of living secretly or in private, I'm suddenly going to be really gay, and people are going to see that. So I was like,
What does that
all right.
even mean? What does that even mean? I'm gonna be super gay now.
Well, for me at that time, it didn't necessarily mean like how I dressed or like my jobs or anything like that. It just meant like I'm gonna start being gay. I'm gonna like be seen with men in public. I'm gonna be seen, like when I'm dating someone or forming a relationship with someone, like um, I don't like to hold back. Like I don't do like just like excessive PDA or anything, but I touch people, I kiss people.
Mm,
Um, I like to bring dates to social events. I like to introduce my dates to my friends, and also
I
like
see. I see.
my parents were still creeping on me at that point, and I did it out of respect for them, and they of course didn't take it as respect. They took it the complete other way, but I was like, y'all, I want you to know I've made a big decision. I'm changing part of my identity, and I don't want you to speculate and think that I'm gay or like not be sure, right? Or like I don't want you to just see that I'm dating men or see it on social media without hearing it from me and being prepared for it. So like before I started doing anything gay, I was like, I'm good.
Yeah,
Like,
right. Like, yeah,
yeah,
the word that comes to mind is normalize, because at this point, like, there's nothing abnormal about being gay. But I think that that's what it is. It's like wearing it on your sleeve but not having to hide anything, just
I
being
don't
your,
hide stuff.
yeah, just being yourself. So a couple of points came up when we were talking about like trying to be with girls. Are you a gold star? Oh,
I mean, to be fair,
ladies, Coco hasn't found the right girl yet.
definitely not. No. I loved the girls that I dated for real, but I
Yeah,
should have, now looking back, I understand that it was like best friend kind of love. I should have just been like besties with them.
yeah,
And I would still be best friends with them today if it weren't for the fact that we had like a weird dating relationship. But yeah, like I would get a little sexual and a little turned on when I was like making out with those girls or like feeling up their bodies and stuff. But there was
yeah,
a part of me that was just like, but I don't really, this like I could turn this off immediately. Like I don't need it. It's not like authentic. It's not like I really want to have sex. And then eventually that turned into like fear and paranoia about
yeah,
sexual situations with females. So I actually really think that I have some trauma that prevents me from being sexual with females, but I may never be able to fix that or deal with that, and I don't really care because like I don't need to be sexual with women,
yeah,
but
yeah,
definitely kind of traumatized myself by trying to make myself be sexual with women, but I never actually got there.
yeah. Another thing that came to mind is when you said that you had your first experience with a man and you're like, oh, I'm comfortable with this. Was there any guilt associated, or did you feel like, woo, the heavens had opened.
No, I was so done with guilt at that point. I'd been really struggling for a long time,
Yeah.
and
So
I was like,
it was enjoyable.
yeah, it was great. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I wish I could say the same. Because the first time I had an experience with a man, it was one of those at a party, drunk, you know, and long story short, I was seduced and I had no idea what was going on. Before you know it, he went down on me, and I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck? He pulls down his pants and like, you do the same to me now. And so we're on the floor 69ing at this point, and I'm 15 in this story. And in the party, people started banging on the door and on the window, watching, horrified. And I could hear the word faggot. I'm like, what the fuck? And I snapped out of it because I'm drunk in this story. And I'm like, holy shit. And drama ensued outside. It happened to be my sister's boyfriend's cousin who made the move on me. And there was a little bit of altercation outside because he did what he did or got caught messing around with me. And then it wasn't until a couple of days when I went back to school, then the rumors had started. I'm like, fuck, I don't even know I'm gay. I thought I was exploring whatever. But it wasn't until maybe 2 years later where I kind of redeemed myself. Now I'm 17 in this story, and I met somebody who was 23, who shall remain nameless, but I was so drawn into him. I was drawn to him. I was into him, and I'm like, we ended up being at a party, same conditions. We were drunk. And then I was really hitting on him hard. And so finally he gave in. He said, do you want to come to my place? And I said, absolutely. So he taught me how to top. You know, like I kind of knew that that's the direction I was headed. Like I wanted to be the dominant one, like not knowing like what the fuck I was doing. I just knew that that's the position I wanted to be in. And he taught me, and he taught me to slow down and so on and so forth. And it was wonderful until it was over. And when it was over, I went home and the guilt kicked in. Like I was showering, I was scrubbing myself. I was so icked. It was just a trip. And it took a while for me to experience being with other guys after that point. But the winning formula for me, so I thought, was that you have to be drunk. You had to be all of these things in order for me to go to that space. Otherwise, as a sober guy, like, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, and I want to say that's probably pretty normal back in the day, because it's like we didn't have access to other people, or we didn't have internet, so we couldn't connect to other people who were going through the same thing. And so it felt abnormal, you know, or it was a shame associated with being gay back in the day, especially during the time of like AIDS wasn't even in the forefront of everybody's existence. So it was a trip to go through that in the 80s. But then, so I found a partner, and we were together for a while. We were both very young in this story. And so there was a moment where we were together for a couple of years and we had broken up. I decided, you know what, I'm going to try being with girls this time. And so I was with a chick for 3 months. It was summer of love. And it was purely physical at that point. Like we did all the things, like we showered together, we would have sex. Every time she had her period, we celebrated. It was just a really weird time in my life, until she started getting into my head. Like she started saying, you don't do this and you don't call me. And I feel like you're just using me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is just as awful as it was being with a guy. Like there's no difference. Like it wasn't easier to be with a girl, you know, and I thought it was going to be easier. It's like, no, it was still emotionally challenging. And you know, the sex was awesome, but I'd realized like that was just sex,
Yeah.
you know. But I'd never turned back, and I'd realized like, yeah, it's just a weird dynamic, you know. It's in your head what you consider comfortable, because I was not comfortable with the person I was with. Bless his heart, he was a little more flamboyant, and it was hard to take him around places because people already knew, you know what I mean? Like it couldn't be in the closet with him.
Right.
But for the longest time, he was my roommate, according to my, you know, I told my family, you know, he was my roommate. And we actually lived in an apartment that had 2 bedrooms just to keep it legit, you know, until my dad found a note. my dad happened to, pop in to visit, and he found a note on the door because he just happened to show up at the wrong place at the wrong time where we were fighting. And I left a note saying, I'm going to be disappearing for a couple of days. I'll talk to you on blah, blah, blah. And my dad read this note, and it was like, I didn't have to come out anymore, you know?
That's why I went ahead and just put it out there for everyone because I was like, I don't want anything awkward like that to happen. So I'm
Yeah.
just gonna get this awkwardness out of the way right now. No elephants in this room.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to be in charge of the narrative here. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But I had to give you a 10-minute warning for the client coming up, so I only have 10 minutes left.
Oh yeah, no worries, no worries. I mean, I'm good. I just wanted to like touch base with you and stuff about like, you know, how it all started for you, because, you know, fast forward later, here we are back, you know, Rainbow and men's work and OnlyFans and yoga. Like one thing I love about you, Coco, is that you are a great example of like it all gets to be here. Like being a queer yoga teacher is not the same as being a straight yoga teacher, because it's like we have to also own our own sexuality, and sometimes we get judged for that in the straight world, you know. And I've always been curious in terms of like, I wonder how yoga sees us being as openly sexually liberated out there, and not, you know, we talked about this brahmacharya. It's like we kind of like look at that brahmacharya piece from a different lens, you know, because we're gay, and we're still trying to figure out like how we fit into this world, you know?
Totally, yeah. We're just different and we develop differently.
Yeah.
And we are not, you know, we're not designed to be in the box. And even yoga is a box. You know, it's got certain or at least some people make it that way. It's got certain teachings and some people are dogmatic about it with certain rules. And like, I mean, it came up in my community, my Telegram community a couple weeks ago. A gay guy from Europe who didn't grow up with Christian conditioning and trauma around being gay is starting to get into this very dogmatic teacher, and shared some of the stuff. And then those of us with like religious and trauma from trying to be like forced into the box, we were like, we're we do not like that.
Yeah.
And so like we're different. We have different trauma that makes us need different things, and we're still continuing to develop in different ways than a lot of the world is. We're queer.
Yeah, totally.
We're not following the rules, you know.
That's right. We are the trendsetters.
Apparently.
We are the trendsetters. We always were, we always will be, because we take risks. You know, we're not afraid of like what the norm is, right? So we just kind of like check our own boxes, you know?
Yeah, we're just not straight.
Yeah, which is, yeah.
And that
little, that little.
In your sexuality, it's just like everything about your vibe is just not agreeing with.
Yeah, totally.
With the straightness. And I think that it's part of like the humor of the universe to create people like that. We're like the clowns of the world.
Yeah.
We're kooky. We're here to show that the rules, like, actually, that rule does not have to be followed.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm fine.
Exactly. Yep. We're here to glitterize.
I'm not following the rules, and I'm actually having a lot of fun, you know?
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much again for like seeing me and talking with me. It's always a pleasure, my darling. Have a great, wonderful rest of your day and your week. I will chat with you again soon. And for everybody there watching, all our 8 viewers, thank you so much for watching again. And hopefully we'll see you again very soon. Ciao.
Thank you.
Take care.